Well, Simon, if we could start with you telling us your story and the journey that got you to here. And I would say start as early as you like, and because we'll all be fascinated to know how in the world does somebody get to be you?
Well, let's start at the very beginning, as the famous song from The Sound of Music says. My parents, my mother was a devout Catholic. My father had got married at the end of the Second World War in a rush of enthusiasm, and I think shortly thereafter found that it wasn't a great match. And so, when my mother and father got together in the 1950s, a divorcee meeting a devout Catholic wasn't probably going to be a recipe for great success, but they did fall in love and then found a way through it all, uh, seeking papal dispensation, amongst other things, to be able to get married. But they
Wow.
didn't have a lot of money, but my father was very keen indeed that he wanted to have his own business. His parents had had a small construction business, which he worked in, but wasn't passionate about that. He wanted to be a boat builder. So he bought a plot of land, bare plot of land next to a river. And they bought what we would call in the UK a caravan, but in the US I think called a trailer, but certainly a small one that you'd tow behind a car. And they put the trailer on this small plot of land, got married, and moved into it. And so my sister and I, my sister's 3 years older than me, we were born in the caravan, and we were raised in our early years in that small caravan. So our beginnings were very humble. We didn't move into our house, I don't think, until I was 5 years old, a little house that my father had built in his spare time whilst building his business. And he built a business, a boat building business, and we lived right in the middle of it. So as a child, I grew up not in privileged circumstances, quite modest circumstances, honestly. And my mother was a school teacher, and my dad built the business. But, every weekend, my mother would work in the business when she wasn't in the week working at school. And so the whole family was involved. It was a family endeavor. And so I grew up in this small family business, seeing a lot of my parents at weekends. And, we were really quite a sort of a self-contained family. And so, I grew up in this environment, and I went to college at 18 to do a business degree. And it went in the Middle Ages, of course, when I went to do a business degree, in the UK at least, an undergraduate business degree was not thought to be a legitimate subject of academic study. So there were only two university schools in the UK that offered an undergraduate business degree at the time, one of which was so far away I couldn't quite imagine going there. So I went to the one that was nearby at Birmingham, and I did my undergraduate business degree, which, of course, when I finished that degree, it didn't qualify me for anything. And so I decided that I'd go and train as a chartered accountant, which in those days, of course, was one of the few ways you could get really a professional qualification in business, a CPA in American terminology. And I joined Arthur Andersen in the early 80s when that was a good thing. And my goodness, it was a terrific firm. Certainly the firm I experienced was terrific. Qualified as a chartered accountant. And during that 3 years of qualification, had the opportunity to work on a couple of restructurings, which was something that AlixPartners was well known for in the UK. And I really fell in love with that type of work. I love the problem-solving element of it, and the people element of it, because it was all about trying to get a group of people to a better place, normally on a schedule. And I never left restructuring. When I finished my training at Anderson's, I stayed on for another 6 years doing financial restructuring. I then left with a group of people from Anderson's to set up a boutique restructuring business. I was by far the youngest partner. The two senior partners had the market reputations, and that was my route into the consulting industry. There's more to the story, but let me stop there for a moment.
What is the superpower that you have that at age 34, colleagues who are much more experienced than you, and then again at Kroll, you show up and you're coming from a smaller acquisition. And we know that acquisitions people often look down on the people who come. They can't be as good as us because we bought them. And the next thing you know, you're running it. What is your superpower?
I mean, honestly, Sandy, and I'm not just saying this out of false modesty, I don't believe I have a superpower. I don't think it is that at all. I think that, and there are different ways of expressing leadership, of course, but I think gathering people in pursuit of a common purpose, and I say purpose rather than cause. In other circumstances, it might be a cause, but I think in business it's purpose. I think gathering people around a common purpose and then being able to explain, number one, that the endeavor is purposeful, and number two, that the strategy to implement it is possible, is at the root of what leadership is. And I think that, I think that what I enjoy doing as a business leader is gathering people in pursuit of something that's purposeful. And to the extent that people feel that, what I see and how I think it's possible to achieve that purpose is something they want to get behind and be part of, I think that's at the root of why I've had the privilege of doing these leadership roles.
Simon, you've had this amazing set of experiences. And, I would be curious along the road, what's the worst job you ever had?
Well, the worst job I ever had, Sandy, was when I was at college and needed to get some money together for a trip I wanted to do around Europe. I went to work in the warehouse of a sanitary ware company. And so I would spend sort of with overtime, sort of 10 hours a day, moving sanitary ware around this warehouse and loading it onto lorries. So I've seen more toilet bowls than anybody should have to look at in a lifetime. That was undoubtedly the worst job I ever did and probably gave me a bad back for the rest of my life. But it also taught me that actually, whatever it was paying at the time, £5 an hour or something, probably less than that. It also taught me that actually, people do have to do jobs that are soul destroying and not terribly remunerative. They got families to bring up. They have to put food on the table. And I've, in this, just this understanding of how community fits together and the roles that, we all play. It was the worst job I ever did, but in some ways I took away insights from that still stay with me today. I remember also when I was in another holiday job, one of the other guys had the holiday job, vacation job he'd just come from. At the time, televisions are very expensive, and so people on low incomes would rent their televisions rather than have the opportunity to buy them. And so the rental television business in the 70s was quite a big business. And so his vacation job had been to go and repossess these televisions from people's apartments when they'd fallen behind on their weekly rentals. And I said to this guy, whose name today I can even remember, Nigel Leakey, I said to Nigel, oh my goodness, that must be the most difficult job in the whole world. People are often have these televisions that fall behind on their payment, they're unemployed. So the one thing that's creating entertainment and joy in their lives is their television potentially, and you have to go and explain to them, you have to take it out of their living room. I said, that just must have to be the most difficult job in the world. How did you survive it, let alone do it? And he said to me, Simon, what I learned in that job was that if you treat people respectfully and treat them as human beings, as your equal, that you can do really difficult things, but it's the way you engage them, your humanity, that makes all of that possible. If you go in an aggressive way or an entitled way or an authoritarian way, it sets up a dynamic that is likely to be problematic. But, if you say, look, I'm so sorry, I understand you're behind on your rental, you've had these 3 notices, my job is to come and retrieve the television. He said, more often than not, people are grateful just for the fact that you've treated them with dignity and respect. And it was such an abject lesson, really, that at the end of the day, we're all human beings. We all come into the world, we all go out of the world. And I think that separate and apart from our assigned responsibilities, in any role, at any stage, the ability to deal with people as human beings and treat them with respect, make all manner of things possible.